right, this is Three Brothers Movie Reviews, and we just saw Halloween, the 2018 version. The film was directed by David Gordon Green, the director of Joe and Stronger. It stars Jamie Lee Curtis, Nick Castle, Judy Greer, amongst many other people. The film is a direct sequel to the first Halloween, taking place 40 years after the first one, and it ignores all 7 sequels and the 2 remakes that were made as canon, instead serving as a direct sequel to the first. Michael has been captured after the first night when he killed all those people, and he was readmitted into the institution that he was at the beginning. And following this, Laurie has trained herself. She's been waiting for the night when he escapes, and eventually he does escape on Halloween, and Laurie has to try and track him down and put an end to his evil reign. So, we just saw it. Dan, what are your overall thoughts on the movie? What did you think?
It's interesting. We were just before the movie started, we were talking about another film that had a really anticipated follow-up many years after it originally came out, The Blair Witch Project.
Yes.
That came out in '99, and just in the last couple of years, there was the Blair Witch movie that came out. And we were talking right before the commercials about how one of the troubles that at least I had with the more recent movie is that it felt a little bit ginned up. Like, the Blair Witch Project was shot for no money. It was shot in the middle of the woods, and one of the things that I really like about that movie is it's very simple, and it doesn't have really anything directly overt that expresses like, hey, this is a supernatural situation, or this is like, there's an evil witch that's hunting them. Like, for all we know, it could just be the kids getting lost in the woods. I think this movie managed to do what I wanted, in that it kept the same simplicity of Halloween from all those years ago without getting too insane. Like, I would say that my overall opinions of this movie are, in terms of, does it capture the spirit of the original film?
Yeah, that really is the.
That's kind of the heart of it, because any remake, or any, like in this case, is really kind of a soft reboot.
Yes.
Because it's ignoring all the sequels. Like, I remember Halloween is the first horror movie I ever watched, and I loved it. Great movie, and just on its own, it's a great movie.
Yes.
And then I watched Halloween 2 shortly afterward, and was bitterly disappointed.
I haven't seen any of the sequels, so
It was what I hated about the second Halloween is it felt like a completely different movie. It felt like it was made by a completely different set of filmmakers. It felt like it was like if Halloween was this simple, almost bloodless, scary slasher film. It was like the sequel came in and just Friday the 13th it up. And it was all bloody and gory, but it wasn't scary.
So what did this one do for you? Like, what was the thing that you loved the most about it? What was your ultimate takeaway?
I liked the fact that it felt like the movie was all about how the characters in that world deal with the events of Halloween, as well as on a meta level, deals with how we, the audience, deal with that movie. Like, the movie starts with these 2 podcasters who are doing a true crime podcast on the Michael Myers killings, and they go to interview all the people that are involved, and they're essentially trying to understand why everything happened, like bring light to a really dark situation. And I like the fact that kind of is the undercurrent of the whole movie, is people trying to understand, deal with the fact. We meet Laurie. She's very much in a bad place. Her children, her daughter is basically completely doesn't have a relationship with her. Her granddaughter, you can tell, wants to have a relationship with her, but they don't really trust each other. And Laurie is essentially alone, boozing it up and locking herself in a fortress out of fear. And that was probably the best part of the movie for me, is the fact that the movie doesn't just move on from the events of the first film. It shows that there's been damage left behind, that the characters, even if they did survive, have been scarred by it.
So you appreciated the character conflict?
Yes, I think the characters were really good. I liked the fact that Laurie was a character that I still loved. She very much is like, if in like Sarah Connor in the first Terminator movie is very much like a character who's constantly like being hunted by this monster, and then only at the end does she manage to fight back. And then Terminator 2 is a very different situation. That's very similar to this situation. Laurie from the very beginning has like all the guns you could want for. She has a fortress where she's able to bring down like all the possible ways of dealing with Michael Myers coming back, and you feel that she's been preparing for this for a very long time.
For me, you liked it. I did not like it.
Yeah,
And
this is the interesting part. We both had very different takeaways.
I have not seen any of the sequels to Halloween. Dan has seen 2, and my biggest issue is the tension building. I've not seen the Halloween sequels. What I have seen is a lot of John Carpenter. I've seen a lot of his movies, and I'll tell you what, not just with Halloween, but he is a great director at building tension. His movies, like even not so good horror movies that he made, and even his strongest thing, like The Thing and Halloween, those movies have excellent tension building. And there's something special about the first Halloween. From that opening tracking shot with first-person perspective, you feel this very subtle sense of tension where you feel something could happen at any moment. And even in the daytime photography, when just Laurie is walking around with her friends and coughing up on cigarette smoke, Michael is in this car following everyone, just walking around like behind these little like laundry things, and there's genuine tension built over the fact that anything could happen at any time. But the movie doesn't let you off the hook until the very end when something does happen. And then the movie ends in a way that leaves it open. It leaves it open so that the tension follows you afterwards, where you feel something could happen even though the movie's over. And I did not feel that with this movie. This movie is a soft reboot, and with soft reboots, the key is capturing the spirit of the first. The first film had tension, and I swear the best soft reboots are, for me, are Creed and Star Wars: The Force Awakens. Those are 2 great examples. They came out in 2015. Those movies were similar to the first, but they added new flavor with new characters, and they captured the soul of the first one. There's something special that those movies captured, even if they weren't as inventive. I think Creed was a little bit better. This one, for me, did not capture the spirit of the first one. It does not have anywhere near as much tension. The characters had a lot of potential, but I just was not that scared, and it was the same thing. You preferred Blair Witch more than I did.
Right.
I didn't like Blair Witch because I found it simply wasn't scary. I thought there were too many fake-out jump scares. I thought they weren't subtle enough, and this was similar. You mentioned it. Blair Witch Project was made cheap. Halloween was made for cheap, too. That was
Right.
worth $300,000, and that movie used everything. I mentioned that in my own review. Like, the lighting is terrible, and there's that great shot where Laurie is just sitting there crying, and then you see Michael's face in white, and you're like,
Comes up.
there is so much used about that film's low budget, which helped it. And I was hoping that a high budget would help this movie. Based on the trailers, I'm like, this could be very interesting. They have more to work with, and in a lot of ways they did. They had guns, and Laurie's house was a great set piece.
Yeah.
But overall, tension isn't built because it feels a little bit too overt. It feels a little bit too open in the world. There's like a high school dance. There are a lot of subplots and set pieces that are used which don't aid the tension. And overall, that's my main opinion, is the movie isn't that scary because it can't maintain a consistent feeling of tension. So
Okay, and I think you have a good point. We've only just seen this movie, and I'm still kind of processing how I feel about it. But I do think that what you said is a good point. Is that in the first Halloween movie, really just by nature of the fact that it was made for no money, they had to shoot for tension rather than any like big set pieces.
Yeah.
Like all the stuff that really happens in that movie happens in the last like 15, 20 minutes, and the rest of it is a tension building. But I would maybe make this assertion. I would agree with you that this movie does not maintain the same level of tension throughout that the first Halloween did, just by necessity. But I would argue that it's a different kind of film, like the way that Terminator 1 feels different from Terminator 2. In that, like, you get a little bump in the budget, you get the same soul of that movie, but the elements that make it great are a little bit different. I would say that the tension is maybe less. So the issue is less inventive in this movie, but the scares still genuinely scared me. Like, I liked the fact that the way they shot Michael the whole time, even in like this bright daylight scene where he's outside chained by his ankle, I still found him very scary.
Nick Castle brought it, and I swear, like, he clearly understood the body language. That's one of the best things about the, like, Michael. Like, there's a kill scene where, like, he's kind of like turning his head, creepy crap like that.
Yeah.
That's what made the first one great with him, is he doesn't feel human. Like, there's something about the way he walks, the way he interacts with people. Like, he bumps that kid at the school. Like,
Yeah.
it's body language, and that's what he understands, which is so great when a performance when you can't have the main character talk, or like the main antagonist talk.
Yes.
Is you have to nail that body language, and Nick Castle definitely brought that. I think he was in his costume for the most part. It's so cool that they brought him back.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Great job. So yeah, he was a great aspect. So let's get into strengths here.
Yeah.
So for you, what are your main strengths of this movie? What do you think works the best about it?
I think that they do a great job making me believe that this is a world that happens 40 years after the original Halloween. Like, the way they use the characters, the way that the story is told, I believe that these people went through a really, really horrible situation. Like, they really outlined that early on, is that there was a murderer that showed up, killed 5 people, and left a girl traumatized for the rest of her life. Like, that's the base level of it.
We were talking about that. One of my biggest issues with that is the character of Judy Greer's character, who plays her daughter. So for me, like, there's her daughter character, and she also has a granddaughter. A little bit to focus on, but Judy Greer for me was the weak link in the chain of the family, because I did not feel that she was traumatized enough. I felt she should have been more resentful to her mother, and ultimately their relationship felt too conventional. Like, inside of Terminator 2, like, Laurie's basically Sarah Connor in this movie.
Right.
She's very similar to that, and that works.
But I think Terminator 2 is a really good comparison of a lot of these elements to it.
But in the first Halloween, instead of Terminator 2 Judgment Day, one thing which is really great is that John, he really does not like his mother. She's in a mental institution, and I don't want to get too much spoils there, but ultimately he says that she's a psychopath. She tried to blow up a computer factory.
Right.
And the moment of realization is when he first sees the Terminator. It's great cinematic storytelling, like the slow motion, and you just see him pumping the shotgun, and just the look on his eyes where, like, you know, he's been she's told him about this thing, and he's just been resentful, and just there's the look in his eyes where he's like, it's real.
Right.
She was telling the truth. There isn't really anything like that in this movie, where there isn't a point of realization or anything which connects the two of them. It's ultimately because Michael very much does exist. He's in a mental institution, and I didn't feel like their relationship felt as aged. It didn't feel like something which felt like it had a big story. Like, there's a flashback sequence, and other than that, I didn't feel like their relationship felt as solid as it could have been. So.
And that's a good point. I would make this assertion. I would assert that Judy Greer is perhaps not as resentful towards her at this point, because she's almost past that. Like, one of my favorite scenes in the movie happens early on where the granddaughter is like a merit scholar. She's doing really great in school, and she wants her whole family to show up. Her whole family, including her grandmother. And Judy Greer, the whole movie, is basically telling her daughter that, oh, your grandmother can't come. But she's not been talking to her mother. And I like the fact that basically Judy Greer has shut her mother out of her life. She's not angry at her mother anymore, but she's tried to just shut her mother out of her life. What I think brings those two characters together is the granddaughter. Like, you learn early on that Laurie has a good a better relationship with her granddaughter than she can have with her daughter. And I love this moment early on where they're at a dinner table together, and Laurie just starts to cry.
Yeah.
And it's hard to watch, because you believe, like, wow, like, this is someone who's just trying to keep it together, and she can't even do that in front of her own family.
I almost wish I'd seen it a little better. It was just something about the way it could have been earned. But
I would just maybe make that assertion, is that those two characters perhaps don't seem as odds with each other, because maybe it's beyond that. The granddaughter is what brought those two characters together for me.
By the way, I did not hate this movie. I just...
No, absolutely not.
For me, that was the key thing, and it was the same thing with Blair Witch. Is like, you're making a soft reboot sequel to your original film.
Yeah.
And like the key with that is you gotta be scared.
Yes.
And I did not find that with the first Blair Witch, and it was the same here. I'm like, I wasn't that scared. Good character building. And you
Right.
like that with the first Blair Witch. That's a redeeming trait for you is the characters. And I do agree they're similar in this where they focus more on the characters. There's more characters in the first Halloween.
Yes.
Which is good. Jamie Lee Curtis blew it out of the park. Like that's the key criticism.
Absolutely.
That's the criticism which everyone is talking about. Like, she's amazing. She's great. I didn't think she was in the movie enough, though. I wish she had been in more. Like I wanted so much more of her because that's one of my biggest issues. Like if we're talking weaknesses here, we might wish-wash between
Yeah.
that. But for me, I felt there were too many characters and too many subplots. Like
Right.
you mentioned that it juggled them fairly well, and I agree. I would
Yeah.
I would back that.
It focuses on the right ones. There's a lot, and I do
Yes.
agree that there are a couple that definitely burn out.
Yeah.
But
There's-
I think that it focuses on the ones that matter the most.
There's a subplot with the high school dance scene. This relates back to my tension building. But there are so many characters. There's like a sheriff that they're following. There's another psychiatrist. There are many, many different characters that we're following around, and I'm like, I wish that it focused just on Lori and maybe two other subplots. Her family is important. They
Yes.
should have been in there, definitely. And that's something that could have helped them.
Okay.
Huge thing which I want to say, I swear, better part of the film, I was not happy. I was really not having a good time. And something else, I like, don't want to waste too much time here, but I felt there was way too much humor. The ending, the last 25 minutes of the film or so, really, really good stuff.
Yes.
That was what I paid ticket
Worth the price
for.
of admission.
Definitely
for sure.
worth the price of admission. Let me tell you, I've got problems, but that last 20 minutes, tense as hell. There's a scene with mannequins, really, really gripping. And I swear, the way that scene was executed, there isn't that much dialogue, but it's great cinematic storytelling, and it's just such perfect payoff where you're like, this is what this has all been building towards, and I loved that.
Yeah.
That was the soul of the film, and there are moments like that, like the scene with the truck, and that it gets a little bit into spoilers.
Yeah,
But
I can
wish
just
you
say
guys
this
had
without even going into spoilers. This is a movie clearly made by people who love Halloween. Like, even if you don't think the movie captures the spirit of Halloween, it's made by people who have a lot of love for the material, and there's a lot of little details that enhance the viewing experience, because if you enjoy the first Halloween film, you'll notice little bits and the ways they've tweaked elements from the original film and added them into this film that make it a really interesting experience. Even if you don't find it scary,
Yeah.
I would say there is value in the movie outside of that.
And I can say that about Blair Witch, like, because that's the thing we keep comparing this back to. But Blair Witch, Adam Weingart directed that, and Simon Vera wrote it. They did The Guest, they did Your Next. I've seen both of those.
Absolutely.
They are talented directors. And when you watch this, you're like, these guys love the first Blair Witch.
Yes.
Clearly. They
Yes.
poured a lot of heart and soul into that movie. And this was similar, but I think even more so than Blair Witch, I don't think this movie understood Halloween. I think it was loving it. It loved Halloween. The filmmakers clearly are inspired, but I don't think they understand it as much. There's too much humor. There was only one scene that made me laugh. There's a scene where a character is drunk, and they're in a moment. They're in a moment which is down, and like Michael is just sitting there in like standing by a tree, and he's just like, man, I'm sorry, I'm here. I mean, like, have you ever had this happen to you? And I'm like, I was laughing. For the most part, I
Yes.
was like, a lot of the jokes, I was like, come on, jokes. This is supposed to be scary. That was a moment where I'm like, this is funny. They're playing off the idea that Michael isn't talking and he's just gonna kill him in a few minutes. But
Right.
that was a funny scene.
Yeah.
But that's another one of my biggest issues, which ultimately this relates back to the tension. But I thought the jokes were a little overbearing. It wasn't like Star Wars: The Last Jedi, where like they ruin the feeling, but still, I think it harmed the tension. It
Comedy
harmed.
is always subjective. I think that it's always going to be your mileage may vary. I didn't mind the tension. I didn't mind that. I mean, do you want to jump into weaknesses now? Like maybe the things that, like,
Yeah.
I'll start. I mean, I've been kind of
Okay.
praising the movie a bunch.
Yeah.
I will say that there are subplots that, thinking back on them, maybe burn out. There's a subplot with a psychiatrist that has been watching Michael for a long time. There's some elements of, because ultimately all roads in this movie lead to the last 25 minutes.
Exactly.
And some of the roads that lead there are a bit abrupt.
Yeah.
I would say that there's especially with the granddaughter, who I actually thought was my favorite character through most of the movie.
She was, and
she didn't have as strong of a conclusion to her character as I wanted.
I almost wish they'd cut out Judy Greer. I wish they'd focused on one or the other so that there would have been more emotional weight. I think if it had just been...
That's fair.
Because I did not know about the granddaughter until very recently, and I thought it was just going to be about Judy Greer. And I thought, if you'd done that, you could have done a great job building relationships.
I think that might have been the problem, is that
too much
they focused on the granddaughter, and you lost focus on Judy Greer. Judy Greer has some great moments towards the end, but I do agree that overall, she's basically in her standard Judy Greer form, which is always great, but it's generally you want more out of her. You definitely get that at the end, but...
Yeah, she's just kind of insecure. That was my trouble. She blended a little bit, as you said, but yeah. There's a moment at the end, and I swear, accompanied by great music. That's something I haven't talked about.
Oh, absolutely. Can we jump back to strengths really quickly? John Carpenter's...
Okay, this is a strength for you. This is a weakness for you. Go on ahead.
John Carpenter's score is great.
He made it with his son, Cody Carpenter, and one other person. I was so happy that he was coming back. I did not think the music was used enough. In the first Halloween, the music adds so much. It was made after the film. He made it in 3 days. He scored it, and it was simple, and it adds so much to the tension. And I go back to the tension all the time. But this movie has so many elongated sequences without any music, including the ending. There's that scene, like, and I cannot get into spoilers, but it involves Judy Greer. There's a great song which does not sound like the original Halloween. It sounds like something John Carpenter's creating now with his Lost Themes albums, and I loved that. I loved that there was an original song used in there.
Yeah.
But I don't think the film itself used the music as much as it could have, because the music could have added a lot. But in addition to the lack of focus with all the subplots he was focusing on, I'm like, you have John Carpenter making music for Halloween for the first time since Halloween Season of the Witch, and you don't use it that much. I'm like, what a waste. There's so many scenes that are long, go on forever, including the ending, which is admittedly great, but there's so little of it. I'm like, why didn't you use it more?
I think that might be a consequence of it being a Blumhouse production. Like, I think that my biggest takeaway from the movie is I liked the fact that it was a lean movie. Didn't feel like it had any fat on it, but I think the consequence of that is you might miss out on stuff you want more of. Like, I think that's something that we can agree on. The things that we liked, we wanted more of that.
Yeah.
And I think that might have been, like, the overall weakness for me, is that there's stuff I really like in it, and I would have liked more of it and maybe less of the other stuff.
It's trying to do a lot of things, and in doing so, it sacrifices some of the things it could have focused on.
Right.
Yeah. That, I think, is the ultimate takeaway.
They've got a great set of stuff in front of them.
Yeah.
And you're going to have a great time. I would say that. But
yeah, I'd recommend it if you're a fan of the first Halloween.
Sorry, am I jumping the gun here?
No. Well, we got to wrap up here soon. But yeah, exactly. So we'll get to ultimate takeaway. But yeah, so final rating. We're gonna go 1 out of 10. Dan, what did you think? 1 out of 10. What would you give it?
Oh, jeez, I haven't even thought about that. Honestly, I was really happy with the whole experience. Like, I was just sitting there and just happy with it. Just happy that it was a Halloween movie that I was enjoying in the Halloween season. I would give it a 7 out of 10. It's worth seeing in theaters for sure. I would say that even if you're not scared by it, the movie has other qualities that make it worthwhile. It has great character work from Jamie Lee Curtis, thank you. And I think that it's really shot well. It handles its characters in a way that I appreciate in a horror movie, which is I'm not constantly annoyed with the characters. The characters aren't constantly making stupid decisions. They're not constantly acting outside of just within the boundaries of the plot. I do appreciate that the characters did feel like characters, and that they existed in a world where this awful, awful thing happened 40 years ago that they're all trying to deal with.
That's pretty good. I hate to do this. I swear, that first bit, I was not happy. That first, like, first and second act of the film, I was not happy, and I was in the lower realm. That last 20 minutes jetted it up just a little bit, but I'm still in the low range. I'm gonna go 5 out of 10, and my reason for that is the tension. That's what my entire argument goes back to. But this film needed to capture the spirit of the first Halloween, and to do that, I feel you needed to capture the scare value. You needed to capture the slow burn feeling and the idea that anything could happen at any point. Because for the majority of the entire film, I was not that scared. Lots of humor, lots of fake out jump scares, and lots of scares that didn't pay off. And that ending scene was everything I wanted it to be, which was so great to see, but a lot of the stuff around it felt like baggage, and overall I felt the experience wasn't as scary or as faithful as it could have been. So 5 out of 10, and last little bit, so do you think it's worth seeing in theaters, or what do you think
I would say that it's a great movie. It's really, we didn't even talk about the fact that I think it's really well shot, really well directed, really well edited.
There is a lot to talk about in this, Rob. We're going to try to keep this short.
Just as a pure movie, it's a great movie.
Yeah,
and I think that your mileage, I think that based on like our different experiences from it, your mileage may vary on what you take away from that movie, but it's absolutely a movie worth your time in the theater.
I would agree, and I'm like, seriously, the reviews are kind of splitting, and I swear it's not like The Last Jedi where some don't like it because it changes things and some like it because it does. Mm-hmm. A lot of people kind of disagree on if it captures the spirit of the first. That's what's splitting people, and we have that here. But I still did enjoy the experience, and I would recommend seeing this in theaters. I think it's worth supporting. It's a good film to watch in the Halloween spirit. See it on Halloween, and overall, I have my issues with it. I don't think there's that much to go back to, but it is a worthwhile film, which is passionately made. So, yeah. All right, well, this is Three Brothers Movie Reviews. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe for more videos in the future.